I'm fired up for today's podcast, the Alpha 5 Method. Today we have Eric Maddox, public speaker, author, and former special operations soldier. He was attached to a task force special operations team in Tikrit that was part of the Joint Special Operations Command responsible for tracking down the most wanted men in Iraq. During his 6-month tour with with this task force team, Eric conducted over 300 interrogations and collected intelligence, which directly led to the capture of Saddam Hussein. And Eric, I had to read that, man, because it's so good, and I wanted to make sure I got it right. But thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Bruce. You were close enough. So yes, got it.
So you're the man that tracked down Saddam Hussein.
That's correct.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to get into more on this podcast. So let's get it rolling. Hey, I'm Bruce Gradkowski, founder of the Alpha 5 Method. We're going to be talking to some of my friends, former NFL players, other high achievers, entrepreneurs, people that have beat cancer. Those are the kind of people you're going to be hearing from on the Alpha 5 Method podcast. Eric, thanks for joining me, brother.
Thanks for having me, Bruce. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. I mean, I've really appreciated your story over the years, speaking at different events around town. And of course, you work with a few companies here in town and on your revolutionary based method with empathy based listening. So fired up to kind of hear more about that. But I'm curious, like, where your career started. I know you're learning Mandarin, Chinese, and I have to be caught up on what that means. I mean, I know that's the language, but there's a few different languages, Chinese languages, correct?
That's correct. They're different dialects. My career started in the military. I graduated from the University of Oklahoma, but I wanted to join the military. And growing up, kind of as a young kid, you see the Vietnam vets, and I like the enlisted guys. I enlisted in the United States military. I started off as infantry. I was at the 82nd Airborne Division. Thought it was great, but I also saw there were different opportunities. And one of those, the military does, they have a foreign language program. And I was intrigued by that. One of the languages that I qualified for was Chinese Mandarin. And I re-enlisted, and that sort of started the second part of my career in intelligence collection, interrogations, and Chinese Mandarin.
So, I mean, isn't that language like the hardest to learn? Like, if I'm going to learn a language, Spanish, Italian, isn't Chinese like Mandarin the hardest to learn?
Well, it was difficult for me. So it's funny, the military has this just made up language test. And they have, if you want to think you can learn a foreign language, they have you take this test. Apparently, I did really well. They're like, oh man, I was like, great, this will be a piece of cake. And I don't know. I'm not saying I question the validity of that test, but for me, learning Chinese Mandarin was extremely difficult. And it's like anything that's that's a process, but it really was one of the first times that I discovered part of my brain and using part of your brain that I had never used for any other learning. And for me, it was actually great. I mean, I recommend if somebody can learn a foreign language, they have an opportunity even at a young age, do it. It opens up part of your brain for learning.
That's so cool. We have 3 kids, 6, 8, and 10 right now. And they memorize these song lyrics. And I think to myself, I'm like, I knew every song lyric up until college. And now I can't learn a song worth anything. I've memorized all these NFL playbooks. So you're right. So, like, as a young kid, I feel like they remember and learn so much. Our kids are in Spanish right now.
Yeah.
But so how old are you at the time when you have to learn this new language? Because I can't imagine right now me going and trying to learn Mandarin, maybe Spanish, Italian, but like, how old are you in your career? Like, where are you at to where how did you teach yourself how to learn this? Like, what was your study habits? What did you find most necessary to do to help you learn this the best?
So great question. I started learning the Chinese Mandarin when I was 25 years old. So I've been in the military for a little over 3 years. I will say some of these soldiers, they started when they were 18. They've enlisted and went straight into the language program. I could tell the difference in those 7 years. Just
Oh,
your
wow.
brain's stickier, and it's not getting it's getting less sticky as the years go on, right, Bruce?
Right.
So, but for me, it was you would think it's repetition, but for me, what helped me learn the foreign language and really the way I learn is I have to get thrown in a situation.
Mhm.
Like, I have to be in a situation to where you're either going to communicate with this person or you're not going to find out where you're going to go.
Mm.
Right. So if we go to Chinatown up in San Francisco, and then after the Chinese Mandarin course, they actually sent me to China. I lived in Beijing and I would get lost, like physically lost. I didn't know how to get back to my house. And you realize this isn't about Chinese Mandarin. This is about communication. This is about working with somebody. And it was from that that my brain said, "Hey, forget all the the grammar, forget the exact pronunciation. Communicate with this person." And when I was able to get that mindset, this is about communication. It really allowed me to kind of relax, learn the words I needed to know, and build on that.
Wow, and that's such a good point because we can get caught up on like the test, how the test went, or being perfect in how we communicate. Now, when you're in that situation, is body language still a big telling tool? Like, even if you don't quite understand their language, can you still go by that, or not so much when you're traveling about as you were?
So I think body language is it is it's the most important thing when it comes to communication.
Mm,
It's not necessarily the words. Now, what I train on is analyzing the words, but it's simply because we cannot control our body language. Another person cannot control their body language. So there's no reason for me to train people on thinking we can control our nonverbal communication, but it is the bulk of communication. But we are instinctive to pick that up with another person. So, of course, when I'm dealing with a person in foreign language that I'm not proficient at, I'm picking up all that body language. And people think, well, what do you mean, like the crossing of the arms? And I said, most of it's in their
mm.
eyes, right? It's in their face. There's so many muscles in the face that are moving that most of what we pick up's right there in front of what we're looking at anyway. But of course, yes, nonverbal communication is the bulk of
Well, I
communication.
remember when we first met in an event you were speaking at. I remember talking to you for a while, and I'm thinking the whole time, this guy is staring right into my soul. He's knowing exactly what I'm thinking, doing. Um, Kind of take us through. So you're living in China, you're learning the language, but then how did you kind of get on the path to where you were at some point in Iraq, helping this task force to try to capture one of the world's most dangerous men? Like, how did that all unfold? And could you ever imagine that when you were 25 learning this language?
So, no, I could not imagine that. And when you get into the Chinese Mandarin program, the military's they're pretty upfront. And they say, you're going to learn Chinese Mandarin. Well, if we go to war, in the Middle East, you're not going to be
Hmm.
used. We are focusing on your Chinese Mandarin abilities. We're going to use you as an intelligence collection officer against the Chinese military for the United States government. So then this is all the mid 90s, right? So I graduate Chinese Mandarin course in 99. I living in China in 2000. Well, of course, we know what happens in 2001, 9/11, right? That kind
Mm.
of starts this series of wars with Afghanistan and then Iraq. Well, at that time, I was working as an intelligence collection officer in Los Angeles, California. I was hitting up the Chinese government scientists and researchers working along the universities on our West Coast. I'm told 100% you are not getting sent to either one of these wars. Well, by the time that we got to Iraq, it was clear that our military we were not capturing the high value targets that we needed to capture. It was a war zone, and they realized we can't get the intel. Like, we're not finding bin Laden. We're not finding Saddam. And Saddam was the ace of spades, right? He created that deck of playing cards. So the idea was, well, we do have prisoners, the enemy. What if we interrogated them? And they said, well, we have interrogators. And this Delta Force team, of course, it's the top of the Joint Special Operations Command. They said, we want an interrogator out there with us. They said, we want someone out there going on these raids with us on a day-to-day basis. So the military kind of looks around at all their interrogators and they said, well, that's not what an interrogator does. They're not infantry. So they searched the military and they said, give us any interrogator who's infantry. And it'd be really cool if it was kind of like maybe graduate of Ranger School. Well, apparently I was the only person on that list. So I'm plucked out of LA. I mean, pulled out of my LA job, Los Angeles, and sent to this Delta Force team in Tikrit, Iraq. And that was Saddam Hussein's hometown. It was Saddam Hussein out Tikrit.
So when you get pulled out, like, do you know what mission you're about to go on? Like, how did this unfold? Or they just grab you, throwing you in a plane, and they're like, "We'll tell you when we get there what mission you're on."
It was definitely when I left the United States. We'll tell you when you get there. That is not typical. Let me tell you, if you get we tell you when you get there order, you're like, what? Because the military's so big, Bruce, that
Right.
you don't know what everybody does. I didn't know what the Delta Force, I didn't know what they did. But as soon as you get there, you start looking around and you're like, oh, this is something, right? They're up to something here.
Man, that gives me the chills. Like, just the adrenaline rush, the excitement. Like, yeah, I played football. Like, playing in the NFL was excitement. I got adrenaline rush, but you're talking about life and death. You're talking about a situation, 9/11, that turned our world upside down, and you get pulled into one of the biggest operations as far as what we needed to do to capture some of these bad guys. Talk about, you brought up the ace of spades. Explain, like, the deck of cards and that kind of thing.
Sure. So in 2003, so here we are in 2003, we invaded Iraq. We got to take down Saddam. The Department of Defense created a deck of playing cards, like you would play poker,
Mhm.
black, like playing cards. And they had the faces of the top 55 regime members under Saddam Hussein. So Saddam was the ace of
Mm.
spades, and his two sons were two of the other aces, and all the way down. Well, this deck of playing cards apparently was a great idea because everybody in the military received these cards. It was the target set. Like, this is who we're going after. This is the trophies that we're going to win this war. And then it spread through the United States. So those of us who remember 2003, some people on this call may
Not,
be too
not born
young,
yet, right?
but it was on the news and you saw this deck of cards. So it was very clear. I liked it because it was a very clear mission and a goal, and you could put a face to,
Mm.
the enemy.
I mean, just insane. So you're thrown into this. When you get off that plane, you find out kind of what the mission is. You're an interrogator. And I think of interrogators of, we're gonna put
Yep.
a sheet over your head. We're gonna beat you down. We're gonna cut a finger off unless you tell us this, that, and the other. Kind of explain to me the process of, now you're there. The mission, the ace of spades, Saddam Hussein. How do you even start and go about um,
Sure.
tracking
So
him
I
down?
was an interrogator. Now let's be clear. I was a trained interrogator. I received great interrogation
Mm.
training from the United States military. Bruce, I hadn't actually done interrogations before. I was a Chinese.
Wow.
They kind of looked at me as a Chinese Mandarin linguist who'd been trained as an interrogator. All my work was working intelligence collection, creating relationships with Chinese scientists and researchers to gather information against the Chinese military, the Chinese government. That is not interrogations. So I was qualified, but I will say the United States military interrogation techniques, they weren't the torture, they weren't the beat down, but it was definitely communication that was threatening, not physically threatening, but it was just think
Mhm.
you pull somebody off the battlefield, they're the enemy. You're going to say, you're going to work with me, or I have all this information. You're never going home. I mean, it's not a, it's not a very cordial
Wow.
partnership there.
Right.
So that was the technique. And then they taught us different ways to be more persuasive, gather good information about them to build an argument to hopefully they would go, Uncle, you got me. Here's
Mhm.
everything I know. And what I quickly, I mean, within the first week, Bruce, it doesn't work. I don't care what anybody says, it does not work. And it really doesn't work at all. So I'm with this Delta Force
Wow.
team. And to be clear, when I got there, I'm so new to interrogations and war. Bruce, I just didn't want to screw anything up. I didn't really want them to know
Right.
I didn't know what I was doing. I
Mhm.
didn't want to make a mistake and get anybody killed. And really, my whole mission at first was don't let them realize you have no idea how to do this war thing. I just didn't know.
Yeah. I mean, how like it's I laugh because I think of ourselves, like things we go through on a day-to-day basis, maybe our current job or a situation we've been through been in our life and how many times we think that way like, "Oh man, I can't let my boss know I don't know this." Or and you're trying to figure it out. But what was kind of hitting me as you're talking is you, when you talked about learning Mandarin and you were like, I needed to be thrown in to actually be able to communicate and learn it the best. Was this the same type of situation? Like, even though like you're learning on the run, you're thrown into a situation and now this is life or death. I mean, you got to figure it out like to protect yourself. You know, you have to figure this thing out. Like, did that help in that point?
Of course, because I said the first week I realized everything I was taught as an interrogator wasn't going to work. Well, how else would I figure that out? I'm thrown into this situation, and you can imagine, right? So you're a football coach, you're a former football player, but we're all going through this process of life. Think about when the first day of high school, right? Or the first day on your high school team. And then by the time you're a senior in high school and you're a senior on the team, you own it, right? Like, I got
Yeah.
this. But then you see the same person the first day in their first college football game, and they're looking lost and scared. They're thinking, wait, just be that high school person. It's like, no, it's different, but we want to throw them in there. What happens? The question is, when you're thrown in, what do you do? You're going to fail. It's just too many variables that are unaccounted for. So for me, I'm like, wow, I'm never going to get these people to talk. But I couldn't stop there because if I'd have said, I'm never going to get these prisoners to talk, I'm done. But
Mhm.
my mind said, I'm never going to get them to talk using these techniques. That means there's something. There's something. I don't know what it is, but there's something. And once I realized everything I was taught doesn't work, then I can throw that out because you get so comfortable using the old way, the old
Mm.
process. You've got to in life when something hits you that's new, that's different, you got to say, maybe what I was doing before doesn't work. It at least opens your brain to go, let's discover, let's figure
Wow.
out what it is, if there is something.
That is so cool. And that's such good self-awareness, situational awareness. Um, how scary was it in that moment? Was it more of like in a football game, like reactionary, I gotta change the way I communicate and figure this out? Or was it like another week goes by and you're like, okay, now I should try to figure things out the other way? Like, was it a quick switch or a longer process to take you?
So, me, this is just the way my brain works.
Mhm.
I'm a quick pivot guy. Now, I had the opportunity to do interrogations pretty much 12 hours a day. I could do them 18 if I wanted. So I had a lot of data that was saying this isn't going to work. So it's just, I feel like when your brain is able to go in with the mindset, don't think what you used to do is going to work, or don't think what they taught you is the only way. You're quick to be able to go, I have to pivot. This is stupid. I'm trying to get on the other side of this wall and I keep bumping into this wall. Well, is there a door somewhere? Like for me, that's just the way my brain. So I didn't kind of go, well, give it another day. I mean, let's give it.
Yeah.
I was like, why would I do that? It's like the same thing happening. And I was able to go, are you doing everything you can, Eric, to use their techniques? And then you're telling me it does not work. Then then there's no debate. You pivot. You pivot and go figure something else out.
I love that word pivot because we get stuck. Like we get stuck trying to decide, do I want this job or do I want that job? Do I want to go this route? What do we do for dinner? This restaurant, that restaurant. Like if you just decide and act, you'll know if you're on the right path faster and then you can
Yeah.
pivot.
Yeah. It's why wouldn't you? What's your fear? Do you have a fear of the
Mhm.
unknown? Well, of course, well, we
Mhm.
should, but you have to do it. Like you don't have a choice.
So so you pivot and you pivot fast. I love it. When was it kind of like, wow, this is working? Like when did you get like reassured that the pivot worked?
So great question. So once I realized, okay, the old techniques are basically saying you're in trouble, you're going to have to do what I tell you to do, or else. Once I realized that didn't work, then I thought, well, where do you pivot? For me, I'm pivoting in this
Mhm.
direction. It is what I've been doing doesn't work. Where do I go? I don't know. Who knows? For me, I thought the only people that can tell me how to gain cooperation are the
Mhm.
prisoners. So I thought, then learn from them. They're going to tell you if anybody knows how to help someone, it's the person. So I just started conversation saying, Eric, remove all your assumptions, your preconceived notions, certainly remove any biases, see if they're willing to tell you. And it was at that I had the aha moment that I'm like, oh my goodness. Not only will they tell me, they will tell me so fast it's
Wow.
crazy. And I thought, did first time it happened, I'm like, did that just happen? Did I just literally remove my biases, goals, objectives, and this person basically is showing me the path for us to work together? Then it happened again. And then it happened again. And I was
It-
shocked. I even brought my Delta Force team. I'm like, hey, will you guys watch this? Like, is this real? But once I saw it's not communication. It's not what do you bring to the table? What did I bring to the table? And who's got the most power and leverage? It's the other side going, hey, I have a plan for us to work together, Mr. Interrogator. But I got to first figure out, are you willing to even seek to understand what it means
mm,
to be me? You may have all the control, but do I have any ability to get you to at least understand? Because if I can get you to understand where I'm coming from, Mr. Interrogator, I can use you for what I need. And I'm smart enough to know as a prisoner, if you're going to help me, I've got to help you.
mm.
And it works. And it worked fast. And pretty much over the next 5 months, I did 300 interrogations at this level of cooperation, and these prisoners opened up.
Wow. And now were you trying to coach other guys on your team like, "Hey, this is working so more could get on board with this approach?"
Not at the time because I'm on a team of operators. We call them the shooters, right? They're blowing down. These guys are the most amazing, right?
Wow.
I
Yeah.
was the one who was supposed to give them information. So I was trying to work on myself. Like I didn't have this thing
Right.
mastered yet. I was still like, how does this work so well? And so no, I wasn't teaching it
So
at that time.
So your approach to these prisoners, like, because interrogating sounds, the word itself sounds aggressive,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you think, oh man, like he's coming to interrogate me or what? But how did you get them? Like, what was the approach with them? Was it not a rush to get information? And as you're talking, it's a collaborative type communication. How did that work?
So there's always a rush. I mean,
Hmm.
intel is valuable only to the degree to which the enemy pivots. They move. They if the enemy finds out somebody's been captured on their team, they know that person has intel. And when the enemy finds out, they're going to move so that if that prisoner gives up the information, it won't capture them. So there's always a rush. But what are you rushing to achieve? Like, I had to get cooperation. And for me, again, just to be very clear what the process is, it's not being nice. It's not giving them tea or giving them cigarettes or finding out if we have a common familiarity. And it's not being mean. It's not being threatening. It's not. Like it's none of that. It is simply the act that another person in any communication, they just have one. The first thing they want to know is in this communication, which is basically a partnership. Do you have the ability to understand where I'm coming from? If you have the ability, then they'll go to step two, which is let me see how we can partner together. Let me see what you're good at, Mr. Interrogator. Let me see if I can trust you. But if you don't get to the place where they go, we're taking this, Mr. Interrogator, you're taking this from my perspective, you're going to waste 10 times more time getting them to even trust because they can believe you want to help them. They can believe you're going to keep your word. But if they think you're doing it in what you think's the best way versus what they believe's the best way, you're never going to get cooperation.
Wow. I just love this because I can think of so many situations on my day-to-day basis with my kids, my wife, just like what I'm hearing from you and I've heard in the past of and you've used this, like explain this technique about because this resonated with me so well, getting on their stage.
Yeah. So think about okay, a coach. You're a coach. A lot of people who are going to be listening understand sports. You have a coach that is a dictator. No, here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do. What I've found with all those great coaches, what do they do? They figure out what's their skill set. How can I put this person in the best position to succeed? This player, they know what they're good at. They know their strengths. When they see that the coach is discovering, trying to figure out where to put him in that place, what does the player do? The player says, Coach, I'll do whatever you do. I don't have to question. You're going to put me in the best position. And it does this thing. It empowers the player. It empowers the prisoner. It empowers the spouse. And all I'm seeking is empowerment. My ultimate goal, because I realize, A, I don't know what war is about. I'm not Iraqi. I have no idea where Saddam is. Why am I trying to figure out the solution? They have all the answers. Well, if they have all the answers, why should I be grabbing information from them? Why wouldn't I empower them so they can come up with the ideas? They can come up with solutions. Like, why would I not do that?
Wow. That's so good too. So you're knocking down like one after the next, getting all this information. Because your style is revolutionary. I mean, you're going around to companies, helping sales forces out, talking about your empathy-based listening and so forth.
Mhm.
And so you're knocking down and getting all this information. When did you know you were really close? And who is the one you were maybe working with close that maybe gave Saddam Hussein's location away? When did you know you
Sure.
were kind of at something?
So there were different phases where I thought we were getting close. I will tell you one of the most important things is once I started getting cooperation, and we're getting prisoners to give us other bad guys, not at the Saddam one, right? Just insurgent fighters. I started hearing from intel folks, like CIA analysts, and they're like, "Man, you're crazy. I don't even know what you're doing. Saddam's not here." I was like, "Cool. Where is he?" No, like, we don't know. We just know he's not there. And once I realized, I didn't know what I was doing when I got there. But war's so unique, nobody knew what they were doing. Now, my Delta Force team, they knew how to do raids. They were the best. They knew how to do that. But when it comes to tracking people down, it was very clear to me they hadn't found bin Laden. They couldn't find Saddam. They really didn't find high-value targets. It doesn't mean they're bad at their job. They didn't know any more about what they were doing than I knew what I was doing. That freaked me up. Now, as I'm getting close to the when I'm moving up the link diagram of what I thought was just the insurgency, I didn't think we were looking for Saddam. I didn't. We captured the driver of this bodyguard. That was the inner circle bodyguard at Saddam. And when I worked with this driver, he opens up and he told me, he said, "My boss, that bodyguard, he delivers orders. He delivers hundreds of thousands of dollars throughout the Sunni Triangle every single week." He said, "I deliver the orders for that bodyguard. I deliver the money." He said, "I take all orders from the bodyguard. He is taking every order from Saddam Hussein." And it was at that moment,
Wow.
I was. And let me tell you, Bruce, I questioned myself.
Why is that?
I thought, am I nuts?
Yeah.
Because everybody in the intel world, everybody in the United States military says he's not.
Wow. And he
Have I created this fictitious scenario, and he's not even here? So you have to deal with your doubts too, right?
because oh man, that's so good because like I just think I'm sometimes myself like I'm confident in the direction I should go, like whether it's take this quarterback in the draft, go with this, play call, but if we hesitate, we doubt, like you just said, like everyone else believes he's not there. Eric, he's not there. Don't know. Eric, no. Now, if you're going to continue to say he is right under our nose, you're putting your career on your line. But I mean, talk about having the confidence in that moment to say, no, guys, he's close.
So I didn't have the confidence. I did say it, but I didn't have the confidence. But what I did have confidence was this. I had data points that indicated he was here. I had no data points indicating that he certainly wasn't. I had data points saying, we don't actually know where he is. So my data points said, I think he's here. But the key was before I made those statements, I asked myself, I said, Eric, is there anything you can do at this moment in time to better solidify those data points? And when the answer is no, then you got to make the best decision. You take the available information, you do objective analysis, and you say, here's what we got, here's what you go with it. You make a decision because what else are you supposed to do? Sit there? Do nothing? Like it's not. I don't think that's a good option.
So when you knew the bodyguard, like when you heard that story and you kind of knew the bodyguard, what was the next step and how did you get closer?
Yeah, so that was December 1st, 2003. Saddam will be, just not to give away the story, he's captured on December 13th, 2003. So at this moment, things are flying, right? Bodyguard basically says, hey, the driver of the bodyguard says, I know 5 locations where that safe house is, right, where that bodyguard hides. He took us, we did 5 raids in one night. No bodyguard. But at this point, anybody we captured we captured people at these safe houses. I brought them in using this technique, this communication technique. They quickly open up. They took us to another target. And they basically said, hey, that bodyguard, the guy you think taking us to Saddam, he left town. He went to this town of Samar. They gave us locations in Samar. We raided those. Bodyguard wasn't there. They gave us more locations in Samar. We raided those. And so we're going, basically bouncing from step to step. Now, we're seeing this is all failure. We're never finding our bodyguard. It's not finding Saddam. But what gave me hope was every time I talked to the prisoners, because now, Bruce, I get this basically full cooperation, I knew it's not a failure in our mission, right? Now, we may have lost the day. I didn't get my guy that time, but as long as I could keep the process moving forward, right? It's like if you lose a game, but you know your team's getting better. They're learning, they're getting better. And on December 13th, 2003, we captured the bodyguard. I brought him in at 6 o'clock in the morning on December 13th, and it took me until about 7:45. And he said, I know where he is. He said, Eric, we gotta go. We have to go right now. That night,
why did you have to go right now though? What was the communication from the bodyguard? Was Saddam leaving town, or what? Did he know? Did you think Saddam was sniffing this out?
So no, Saddam Hussein had no idea the bodyguard was captured, but he would find out. And the bodyguard is basically saying, I know where he is now. Once he finds out I've been captured, he's gonna move. And the bodyguard's going, I can't help you anymore if you don't go now. You want to know what full cooperation is when a prisoner doesn't just say, I'll give you the information, but says, I'll give you the information, but you gotta go now. As a matter of fact, let's go. He was driving up. He was the one. The bodyguard was telling us, we gotta go. And when the Delta Force team did the raid that night to capture Saddam, they couldn't find him. He's in a hole. They know he's in a hole. And my Delta Force commander, awesome, Bam Bam basically goes to the truck and pulls out the bodyguard. The bodyguard showed them the exact hole.
Now, at that moment, did Saddam like see his bodyguard, like that he gave him up and stuff like that?
No, he didn't see him at the time. Yeah. Right, because it's pitch dark. He just sees soldiers.
I mean, talk about, you had to, like, I just think of the moment you got in town, and like you said, you're like, man, I'm in training as an interrogator. Now all of a sudden, what's it? How many months later? Is this 6 months? 5 months.
5 months.
And you guys capture Saddam Hussein. Like, what kind of emotions were going through you at that moment?
Yeah. So I'll talk about the emotions because they're unique, right? I'm not sure I've had that feeling since then. It's a very unique feeling. Mm-hmm. But I think I want to make a point. Well, you said, Eric, you got there. You didn't know what you're doing to this. I was an interrogator. I'm not the quarterback of the team. I'm basically water boy. I'm an assistant analyst for the special teams coordinator, right? Like, but you're going to be a part of this team. I don't know what they needed, but I can't sit there and all of us, we can't sit and go, well, this is the only thing I'm supposed to do. Yes, do your job, but the job is to help the team. And when I saw, hey, this team needs help. This is more important for the team. Then I have to step up and go, hey, you can't be a rookie anymore. You can't be scared anymore. Like they need you, and you're not going to sit here scared. That was first day. That's first day. You're allowed to be scared first day. You're allowed to be scared last day. But that does not mean you can't. You have to sit there and go, well, all I'm supposed to do is talk to our prisoners. It's not my fault they're not talking. Like whatever. When you and that's what I want people to know. My team, whether it's a company or sport. Don't show up and say, "Oh, I want to play quarterback." I didn't show up to Bam Bam and say, "Hey, I want to lead this."
With the guy named Bam Bam, I don't know if I'd ever. That just sounds. I'm not messing with Bam Bam.
Man, he's the nicest guy in the world. You do not want to mess with Bam Bam. I promise. But he's a grappler, right? Like, he's legit. But you still have to see if they need you, step up. And by the end, it's like, I didn't even recognize that guy that I was 5 months ago. It's just different because the circumstances called on you to
Wow.
have a
I
bigger role.
no, thank you for sharing that and talking about that because that is so good because it is like with anything, and honestly, that's the Alpha 5 method. Like, you need to be a part of a pack. Like, nothing in life we can achieve individually. It takes a unit, a team, support, family, friends, someone being dead honest with you when you don't want to hear the honest truth, but they love you that much to give you the truth. Like,
Yeah.
so I love that because you say you're going in as a piece to this team, like the assistant of the assistant, the water boy, but you found out in that moment, you know what? I'm scared, but shoot, there's no time to be scared. Like I need to step my game up for the team. And I just love that. And your story
Yep.
is amazing. Like I appreciate you coming on and sharing. And I kind of want to end with a few things because I know you speak around with and work with companies and teams and so forth like that. I just want to ask like a few questions too because this helps me in my life, especially with my wife and stuff like that. Like I get so hungry to want to help people, but how can we be better listeners? What's the key to being a better listener?
So I think the key to being a great listener is the key to successful relationships.
Mhm.
But let's get to what does great mean, right? Like, okay. So the way I can best summarize it, I hope it sticks. It is the realization, Bruce, every single one of us, we're living our movie. We're living our life. We're born, we see the world out of ours. We're living our lives.
Mm.
Everybody else out there, they are living their life. And essentially, we are all the lead in our own movie. But when we approach people and you want to help, you're Bruce, you're the lead in your movie, your lead character is a helper. How do you want to help people? Well, I don't know. I know you, Bruce, so you don't do this, but many times we have good intentions. We're good people. We want to make a difference. We go to other people and we say, man, you're screwing up. You got to do this. And we kind of take over the relationship. We say, no, let me show you this program. You got to do this here. And what we essentially do is we say, you know what? In your movie, you're screwed up, or you can get better. I'm going to drag you out of your movie, and you're going to be in my movie. See, I'm going to lead my movie. I'm going to tell you what to do as a supporting actor. You're in my movie now. Nobody ever wants to leave their stage, ever, ever, ever. And as leaders, and what listening does is it says, yes, you're Bruce. You have value. You can solve problems. You do know how to help people, and you want that, but you're not going to drag them to your stage. You're willing to listen, to seek to understand. Remember, seek to understand? That's you saying, I'm taking Bruce, you're taking Bruce's value, and you're delivering it in their movie where they stay the lead role. When you do this, what I've discovered, because the world around here is so bad at this, if you have the ability to do that, that is your differentiator. When you give someone the empowerment to say, I'm valuable, I'm the one that can solve your problems, but I'm going to do it on your movie and your stage, and you stay lead actor, they will never let you go anywhere. What does that give you? Maximum positive influence. And the influence comes from the empowerment they feel when a performer of value willingly goes on their stage. You do that, and you'll know listening is the key.
Wow. That is so good. Like when you hit it with we each have our own story. We're each in our own movie. It is so true, man. When you're going through something and I get home from a long day of work and I had this to deal with, that to deal with, and my wife's home with the 3 kids, and I'm like, babe, but I had this, and she's saying, looking at me like, I don't care. Like I had this.
Right.
I need to get on her stage, man. I love that. I wanted so many good things. I think what I want to think or ask too is how do you stay calm under extreme pressure? I mean, I can imagine the pressure on you in those moments to get information, but also if you're sitting with someone and they feel you're stressed and you're anxious, and how do you stay calm under extreme pressure?
Well, stress is real. So I have it. People, those really hardcore moments, it's just real. What I try to do, what I try to remind myself is I say, is this helping you? Is this helping me listen? Is it helping me communicate? Is it helping me create ideas to know when I need to pivot? If it's not helping me, it's out. You just gotta ask yourself the question: are you willing to live the day? Are you willing to live today? Because apparently this stress is something you're worried about the consequences of what might happen tomorrow if you fail. So you're living tomorrow. Are you living the day? You signed up for this. Did I sign up for the wrong thing? I signed up to make a difference in a military I'm so proud of, for a country that I love so much. I signed up. Is that not what I wanted? Was I not given this opportunity? So for me, it's like, hey, this is your time. I knew this is my moment. So unless I'm afraid, I'm so scared that stress is going to build up because I'm afraid of tomorrow, then you didn't sign up for the day. And that's what I try to tell anybody. You live the day. Live the day. Enjoy the day. Be you today.
That's so good. We all, oh man, I get caught up trying to look ahead, plan everything out, and see what the future holds. But we got to live the day. Anything else you want to share with our listeners before we go? I mean, so many good things, and I think I love the team aspect. I love getting on other stages. Where can people find you as well if they want to learn more, if they want to listen to you, read your book? Where can they find you?
Just hit me up, Eric at Maddox.com. Just hit me up. And I will say this. So if I had one, just kind of take this into perspective. Leadership is the key. We want to be great leaders. We want to empower. We want to inspire. We think, well, what got us here? It's typically being good at something. Like if you were a good quarterback, or you knew how to make the call, you were clutch under pressure on the field. Doesn't that translate to being a great coach? And I would say your skill set gives you the legitimacy to be in that position. But when you're in the position of leadership, your only job is to empower others. That's it. If you think you're going to be in that job and your primary mission is to make the best calls, yeah, we're still going to rely on you. We're still make better calls than everybody else. But your job is to empower others. And that is a transition, so it's really hard. We're like, this is how I got here. Whatever. We're going to still use you. You make good calls. That ain't your job. Your job is to empower others.
I love that. I love it. Because there's no special feeling when you are that person in that seat, that you have a coach, a mentor, a friend that empowers you. Just the feelings you have for them. And there's so many. I mean, I wouldn't have made it to the NFL. I wouldn't be where I'm at today without the support of my parents, coaches, friends, mentors throughout the years. So what a good point on leadership. I appreciate you, brother. The Alpha 5 Method podcast is about hearing your story. I want to hear from individuals that have overcame adversity. I want to hear their path and what has helped them achieve greatness. Go to my website now, alpha5method.com, and join the pack.